Hi, this is Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., and I'm inviting you to participate in a telephone town hall with me tonight. If you're interested, please stay on the line, and we'll have a discussion of some of the most pressing issues in Washington, D.C., some of the issues that are affecting Nebraska. And then I'd like to hear from you as well. If you'd like to ask me a question, please press 0 on your phone. If you can't stay with us, though, and you would like to leave me a message of some kind, please press 7, and I have some staff here helping me as well. I also encourage you to go to my website at fortenberry.house.gov, and there you can see an overview of a number of the legislative activities that we've undertaken of late, as well as news reports. I'd be grateful as well as if you signed up for the Fort Report. That's a regular email that we send out. That will give you an update, a more extensive update on a particular topic in any one week. If you can't stay on the line, please press 7, and we'd be happy to take your email down and sign you up for the Fort Report. But you can also do so on the website at fortenberry.house.gov. Again, thank you for your willingness to spend a little bit of time with me this evening. This is Jeff Fortenberry, your congressman, calling you from Washington. And if you have a question for me, press 0. Let me give you a quick overview of what I saw last week in Pilger, Nebraska, and Stanton County. Like so many of you, I was just absolutely shocked at the devastation that occurred in Pilger. Governor Heineman was kind enough to allow me to accompany him with the Nebraska National Guard to assess the damage as quickly as we could get there that next morning. It was just utterly devastating. I'm so sorry for not only the extensive damage to so much of that infrastructure, but the harm that came to so many families. 16 people were so critically injured and 2 deaths, including a young child. As we approached Pilger in the helicopter, you began to try to look for signs as to where this tornado touched down. And along the Elkhorn River, you began to see trees that were snapped in half like matchsticks. And then as we got near the town in the fields that are cultivated around there, there was a very large, dark mark that clearly was where the tornado began in its ascent toward the town, or its descent toward the town. It cut straight through in a diagonal fashion through Pilger, and then continued on in the fields to the northeast of there. And then, of course, it had caused damage in the surrounding countryside to a number of cattle feedlots and farmsteads. When the governor and I got to Pilger and got on the ground, it looked like an urban war zone in the Middle East. Twisted piles of concrete and steel piled on cars, entire walls of buildings ripped apart so that you could just peer inside like it was a dollhouse. The roof of the town hall and fire department were gone. Fortunately, the vehicles were okay. Complete 75% of the houses gone. All of the businesses gone. The bank employees, and hearing the loud noise, rushed to get into the bank vault, and thank goodness they did, because their roof collapsed. One of the bank employees told me that she said, "Let's pray and we'll make it." In a little bit of good cheer, though, one of the buildings that was still intact was the bar, and I met the bar owner, and she said, "We'll be open tomorrow." So there was an eagerness, obviously, for people to begin the recovery effort at that point. There was still a great deal of bewilderment and shock. I want to thank all of you who have prayed for the people there. Some of you may have volunteered. I know a number of Nebraskans have poured in to help, as a number of you may have as well during the tornado that hit Beaver Crossing just about a little over a month ago. I know that in spite of the tremendous trauma that the community has gone through, the resilience and spirit and strength of those people who live there and in the surrounding areas is going to compel the rebuilding and not only the survival, but maybe even the thriving of the town into the future. The grain elevator was completely collapsed. The co-op was gone. All of the businesses are gone. Yet at the same time, you really do hope that such a town with such a great community spirit can come back together and rebuild itself. There's a sign outside of in Stanton County, outside of Pilger, that says "Too tough to die." And that really was I think, an appropriate saying for the day, as so many people had thankfully gotten through this. Some with serious injuries, and of course we mourned the two people who lost their lives. One of which, as I mentioned, was a little girl. I talked to the first responder who found her, and she was still alive when he got there. He was the first person in Pilger, and she squeezed his hand, but unfortunately she didn't make it. The county board chairman, the village board chairman rather, is an older gentleman named Jim Duncan. When we met with him, he was one of the first persons we talked to. His glasses sat sideways on his face. One lens was missing. He had cuts above both eyes. But he was in the mix of it all, trying to do what he could to be a good public servant and to direct the recovery effort. The sheriff department was there, state police, emergency responders, emergency personnel were all doing a great job in trying to organize relief effort, maintain a proper order with the media, and make sure that nobody would get hurt as we were in the immediate aftermath of the storm. I picked up the phone Monday night when I heard about all this, and I called a friend of mine named J.D. Alexander. J.D. is a Nebraska cattleman. He's been very involved in that organization on the national level. And he picked up his phone, and I said, J.D., he lives about a mile from Pilger, so I thought he'd know a lot about it and give me some updates right there from the scene. Well, little did I know that the tornado had hit J.D.'s house, and he had just shortly emerged himself from his own basement to find that his walls were tumbled down and basically his house was gone. The governor and I went by J.D.'s place, and he had about 20 volunteers, just neighbors. They're already there, starting to clean up. And a little bit of a small miracle in the midst of all this, J.D. and his wife actually found their wedding rings and a $100 bill in the yard. And their son said, well, at least we have something to rebuild with. But what a small gift in the middle of all this tragedy to be able to find your wedding rings. And if you'd have seen this house like I saw it with debris scattered everywhere, that is a small miracle. The village board chairman also, with a little bit of good humor, he asked me if his taxes were going down now. So in spite of all the tragedy, I'm just really grateful to you all who have poured your hearts out to the people of Pilger, and the way Nebraska has really rallied around the people there and in the surrounding countryside in the midst of this tragedy. Let me also check in with any of you who may have gone to the College World Series. Obviously, I'm not there. I hope it's been an enjoyable event. I understand Virginia is playing Vanderbilt, so the best of luck to either of those teams, I guess, since we don't have a direct Nebraska connection there. I want to touch on one more issue, and then I'll begin to take your calls, your questions. If you'd like to ask me a question, press 0 on your phone. If you can't stay on the line, press 7 and either leave me a message. And if you would do me this favor, we send out a regular email from the office, basically every week, and we give you a more extensive update on a particular issue affecting the nation or affecting Nebraska. It's called the Fort Report, and you can sign up for it on the web at fortenberry.house.gov. You can also get an update of our activities there. And if you press 7, someone will answer the phone, and they'll take your question. And if you give them your email, we'd love to stay in touch with you that way. So let me touch on one more issue, then I'll go to your questions. I want to talk to you a little bit about the IRS. A little while back, the IRS was being accused of an abuse of power because they were inappropriately targeting people because of their religious or political beliefs for additional scrutiny. This is a very serious issue because all of government must act with one clear goal, and that is to ensure the public trust. And you do that by being disinterested, if you will, in a person's background or beliefs, particularly political beliefs. You apply the law evenly and fairly. And to find out that certain groups of people have been targeted, again, because of their political beliefs for extra scrutiny, or they were denied IRS charitable status, and private information had been divulged, that's all against the law. Now come to find out recently as Congress has requested email documentation, 6 hard drives have basically crashed, gone missing. And it's just a pattern that's very, very troubling and a bizarre event, if you will, that the emails that are trying to be gathered about these problematic communications and directives coming out of the IRS, we can't obtain them now because there's been a machine problem. A very bizarre, troubling pattern. What this has led to is one committee basically continuing its aggressive investigation and calling for a special prosecutor to look into this so that it pulls it out of the political fray. It's not just sitting there at the Justice Department, but nonetheless a special prosecutor who's independent from the executive or legislative branch looks at this. Congress will continue to put all of this information in a package, but this is quite serious because it undermines the notion, the necessary notion of people bound together in a republic, the notion that we have to have some level of trust of our public officials. Because what we're in effect doing by turning over a little bit of power to me, to the president, turning over some of our money to the government to spend, we're saying you must do that in a manner that promotes the public common good. And when that is under question, it erodes the very basis for our republic, and that's why this in of itself is wrong, but it's quite serious because it has deep problematic ramifications for the nature of the conduct of the government itself overall, and it increases cynicism, which is already very high, not only toward Congress, but actually the entire level of government. We have to get to the bottom of this and fix it. So with that, let me now go to questions, and thank you all so much for staying on the line. If you can't stay with me, just press 7 and leave a message. I'll be happy to listen to your comment or question, and you can also sign up for the Fort Report. If you'd like to ask me a question, go ahead and press 1 on your phone. Let's now go to, Keith, are you on the line? Good evening, Keith. Member of the Jones family, you there? Okay, let's go to the next person. I'll go to a member of the Merritt family. Hello, good evening.
Hi, yes, I am right here.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you. I'm glad you're having a town hall. I've got 2 questions to ask you. One has to do with the VA, and one has to do with the border. Question that deals with the VA, I'm wondering, you know the raises that they gave? They weren't raises, they were bonuses.
Yes.
I don't understand giving a bonus for doing your job.
That's a good point.
I really don't understand that. I've worked all my life. And I don't need somebody to give me a bonus for doing my job.
Well,
That's
I think
why
the
they
deeper
give me a paycheck.
Yeah. Well, I think the deeper issue, though, is the issue of hiding lists.
But the reason that they did that, Jeff, no matter why they did it, it was wrong. But here's the deal. If there was no offer given to them that if you do your job, we'll give you a bonus, then they would have never hidden anything because there'd have been no reason in their brain to think, I'm not going to get this extra money if I don't make it look like we have done additional stuff.
So you're suggesting the bonus actually contributed to the problematic behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's an interesting...
it's like I really do believe that it's done all over that way, and I think, you know what, do your job, people, no matter what your job is, do it and do it well because you've got the job to do.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because
going to pay you extra.
yeah. Well, thank you for bringing this up because let me touch a minute on the VA issue. As you are aware, we've had several major problems in the VA system across the country. The secretary recently resigned. This was actually a new problem that has come to light, but there was a deeper problem that's been there for a very long time that we've actually worked on. And it was the problem of getting new veterans, people who have just left active duty, getting their medical records transferred over to the VA for medical care. There were systematic delays. We couldn't get computer systems to talk to one another. No one seemed to be paying attention to this problem. It delayed care for certain veterans. It's harmed certain other veterans. And that was the main issue that we had been working on in Congress prior to this larger issue of secret lists, waiting lists, and padding numbers that has actually taken place for, as you're suggesting, bonuses. I actually did a survey myself of the office because we work extensively, of the Nebraskans rather, we work extensively with the VA offices in the hospital in Nebraska. We've always found that there's maybe a problem here or there, administrative problem, but we've been able to solve that quickly and well. And it's our impression that, again, Nebraska does a good job in handling veterans' care, and when there is a problem, they respond to it quickly. Another issue, though, is in certain places where population has grown rapidly, particularly in the southeast and southwest, the ability of the system to handle has basically created significant problems. But that does not in any way justify not getting veterans the care they need, and this bonus issue as well as the secret list. Two things are being done. The hearings will continue. One thing that we're doing is allowing the firing of employees in a more quick fashion than current personnel rules allow. And I think there will be some restructuring of the VA in legislative form that will be forthcoming in the next few weeks. This is a bipartisan issue, by the way, because if there's one thing other than agriculture policy that transcends politics in Washington, is trying to get the right care for people who have served us in our military. So thank you, Rosemary, for bringing it up. Let's now go to, hi, Gordon, are you on the line?
Yes, Congressman, I am, and I appreciate you doing these town halls, and I especially appreciate the fact that this must be the surprise pop quiz for you. So I'll phrase my comments in the form of a comment and not necessarily expect a response today. First, I want to thank you for what you do on behalf of the Armed Forces. I think you're doing a great job. But one issue that I'd like to talk about is that the manning levels and resourcing for the reserve component, specifically the National Guard. I've been active duty and in the National Guard for more than 2 decades, and I've noticed a trend that is getting worse. Right now, the National Guard is more capable than it's ever been, yet we're still manned at a manning level that is built on a 1990s model. And that is fine because that's what has been determined for us. We salute and follow on. However, even that inadequate model is only funded at 64%. So we're only funded at 64% of what is already not enough. So, Congressman, my plea to you, my comment to you is that instead of worrying about raises and pay and benefit for the reserve component, my take would be if we were manned and able to do a better job, we would be able to retain some of our key employees without necessarily raising benefits for all, but by allowing the systems in place to operate more effectively and create better satisfaction on the job, which would then create better performance. Thank you for what you do, Congressman.
Well, thank you, Gordon. Very thoughtful comments. I appreciate that. Let me just respond right quickly. We interact quite a bit, as you're very much aware, with the National Guard components and Nebraska National Guard particularly. There has been some concern raised that as we move forward in time, as we're drawing down from 2 major wars, how we actually do retain the skill set that has been so hard-earned by particularly Guards members. We don't want to lose that. We want to make sure that our Ready Reserve and National Guard, that experience is carried forward into time. You cannot predict what the next conflict will be. In order to potentially have to ramp up after we've ramped down because we didn't have a continuity plan in place, by keeping that experience level high and personnel who has benefited significantly from their enhanced experience in the last 10 years, the expense of that would be very, very inordinate. So we have talked with General Bohack about this. There is a commission that has been put together that is looking at this very question, how the Guard particularly transitions into a future fighting force without losing its capacity and going back into cold status, if you will, and losing the hard-earned gains of the last 10 years. Because I think it would be imprudent to do that. We're all facing, obviously, the need for prudent budgeting and a rethinking of our 21st century security needs. But I think the Guard has an essential role to play in that as a backup force and obviously as an emergency force in our states. But we do not want the expertise that they've gained in such a sacrificial manner to slip from us. So we're working on trying to find that right balance, but I do really appreciate your very thoughtful comments. Let's go now to, hi, Jan, are you on the line? Hi, good evening, Jan. You on the line? A member of the Scholl family? Okay, let's try someone else. We'll go to a member of the Johnson family. Hi, Gerald, you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yes, good evening.
Well, I've got, I guess, two questions. That I always hear this, that we're working on this to try to figure out a way to better solve this problem. And the thing that I can't seem to get out of my mind is that we've got so many issues to where we're spending huge amounts of money, and Congress absolutely refuses to address it. It's just like it's a hot rock issue. And some of the things that I'm saying that we're spending a lot of money on, if you just look at locally, we say that, okay, now we have to have in our school system all this Spanish stuff. When to me, in common sense, when I talk to people that I know, that why don't they just stop and say, well, you can't go on in grades until you learn English. The language of our land is English. We've got the problem with misusing the medical thing, which affects our health care, which costs everybody extra money. And, like, if these issues were addressed, there would be monies for many, many things that now we're struggling to even pay for.
Okay, let me give a crack at addressing some of your concerns, if that'd be all right, Gerald. And first of all, let me ask all of you, please stay on the line. I appreciate you spending a little time with me. We'll have a discussion for the next 45 minutes or so and take your questions. If you'd like to ask me a question, press 0. If you can't stay on the line, go ahead and press 7. You'll be connected to a member of my staff who's here. They'll take down your question. And I'd love to sign you up for the Fort Report as well. It's a weekly email that we send out on various topics of interest. Gerald, let me just frame the issue a little bit larger. We do, in spite of it not being on the front page anymore, have a very, very large problem with overspending at the federal level. The federal deficit this year will be $500 billion. There is $17 trillion of debt. There is a little bit of good news here in a certain sense, though, and I want to tell you that we don't get any credit for this, and I'm not asking for it because, again, the deficit and debt levels are so high. The level of spending on what's called the discretionary budget, which is defense and everything else the government does other than health and retirement security programs, has come down to 2011 levels. Those have been very hard-fought victories. And it's part of my responsibility, I think, to you to ensure that we have a vibrant economy, that we provide national security, and that we work on deeper issues that sometimes can be divisive, but issues I can summarize them in what I call family security. The strength of the nation ultimately does depend upon the strength of family life and community life and the goodness of civic life to teach the higher ideals and values that transmit from generation to generation the liberties that we enjoy. Government has a role in ensuring that we have a fair economic field that is not tilted toward anyone, but is orderly in terms of the opportunity for just and good commerce. We also have the fundamental duty of protecting you from harm. Those are clear duties that we have, and in those areas, we've actually reduced budgets to 2011 levels. That's down from trillion-dollar deficits, where this is not totally due to spending reductions. We made some changes to the tax code a year and a half ago, and there's a little bit of better economic growth. So slowly we're climbing our way out of this, but we do have a long way to go. $17 trillion is a very, very large number. Every American would have to write a check for $54,000. I'm saying all this in order to pay it off. I'm saying all this to you that what it does is it forces critical thinking about how we deliver smart and effective programs for the proper functioning of society, our economy, our defense, and our well-being at family and community life, while also trying to get the fiscal house in order. If you do not do this, you actually create economic insecurity, even national insecurity. And why do I say that? Debt has to be bought by someone, and a lot of it is sold overseas to foreign countries like China. We send a heck of a lot of manufacturing over there. They make the stuff, we buy the stuff, they have our cash, we run up debt, they buy the debt. Now, in the long run, not even the long run, in the medium run, that is a shift of this country's assets into the hands of others. Then we get all worried that China is engaging in military buildup. And so we'll send more ships into the Pacific to counter their sharp elbows. But one of the deeper issues is that we have to get this fiscal house in order. We're incrementally getting there, but it takes hard decisions, some of which affect the things that you were just talking about. Now, in regards to English, in the past, I've been on bills to declare English a national language because I think that's helpful to people, particularly people who have arrived here newly. In order to integrate culturally and economically, it is important to be able to have a command of the working language of the country. It's not to necessarily take away from the preservation of culture and other languages. I love language myself. I'm a very poor practitioner of French, but I like to exercise it. And so it's that trying to find that balance of ensuring that new people to the country are properly assimilated so that they have opportunity and at the same time not in any way denigrating the cultural milieus and traditions that they bring with them, and even celebrating those. So that's one issue. In the area of healthcare, it's tough because we've obviously passed a new healthcare law. I did not support this. We have to have the right type of healthcare reform, but not one that shifts more spending to more unsustainable government spending and erodes healthcare liberties. The right type of healthcare reform will actually protect vulnerable people, particularly people who had pre-existing conditions, weren't able to function in the health insurance market well, and actually reduce cost by making sure that we take advantage of efficiencies that are now not present. That's the larger goals. And so there are rooms for savings in government by trying to think critically as to how we stretch the dollar. When medical groups come in here, I tell them all the same thing. Help me find the answer as to how we deliver better care with less dollars. And most of them are actively working to do that. So thank you so much for the input. If you'd like to ask me a question, please press 0 on your phone. Or if you can't stay with me, press 7, and someone would take down your message. Let's now go to Patrick. Are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. Good evening, Patrick.
How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you.
Okay, good. On the thing that really hit me there was the language thing this guy just talked about.
Uh-huh.
When you come to this country, you should be able to speak the language or a reasonable facsimile thereof. When my grandfather came from Yugoslavia, he talked broken English. You know, when I was in Vietnam, they talked broken English. They tried their very best to communicate with us, to get across what they wanted to say. The ones coming in now do not. They expect us to bend to their ways, and that is wrong. I'm sorry. And on the VA, 20 years I've been going to the hospital. I myself have not had a problem, basically because all I got is a severe hearing loss, and they've taken care of it. And if you ever got a problem with the doctor, all you do is go a step up above his head to his boss, and it gets taken care of on down the line. I know that because I was in a Teamsters union for 40 years. And if you got a problem with the supervisor, you go to his boss, you go to the union hall, you sit down at the table, and you talk about it.
Okay.
People don't want to do that these days.
Well, Patrick, let me thank you first for your service. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, yeah.
Again, I think that most people's experience with the VA service in Nebraska has been positive. We ran a survey ourselves and found that to be the case. our office works pretty extensively whenever a veteran does have an issue, and we seem to be able to get it solved with the partnership of the VA quickly. One of the challenges we do have, though, moving forward is that there is an aging facility in Omaha, and we're going to have to think critically about how we fix that situation. The process by which you build a new facility can take years, if not decades. In fact, the cost would skyrocket so large that I'm afraid that our place on the list is far down that we might not ever get a new one built. So what I did was put in an appropriations bill. I'm on the Military Construction and Veterans Subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee. Basically, we provide the money for the VA system and military construction. One of the things that I have directed the VA to do is to put together creative finance models. Now, we do this for veterans housing, we do this for veterans clinics, but we haven't done it for hospitals, whereby they might, instead of thinking about building a whole new facility, looking at leasing one from a private developer, maybe rehabilitating existing facilities, and then going into lease arrangements. That way That's where I go to. Yeah, you take, there's a need for a new facility in the coming future. We'll continue to get by with what we have. But I think creative thinking about private-public partnerships to actually get this done sooner than later without inordinate exposure to government budgets is where we need to go. And so I've got language in the current bill that actually directs the Veterans Secretary to come back to us as to how they could potentially use constructive, creative finance models, similar to what they've done in other areas of the Veterans Administration to get this done. Anyway, again, Patrick, thanks so much for your service. Appreciate you staying on the line and talking to me. Let's now go to, Michael, you on the line?
This is his wife, Dolores.
Hi, Dolores.
Hi. I have a couple of questions. One, my husband's retired Navy. He spent 22 years in the Navy. And we are on TRICARE. And we are having trouble with TRICARE pharmacy. Okay. We live in Waverly, and we would like to be able to use our pharmacy here in town. I don't trust the mails, and they want us to get our medicine through the mail. And my husband is on heart medicine. They had to take him off his heart medicine because it is not generic.
I see.
Now we got another phone call yesterday and said that they were going to refill our medicine 2 times, and then they would make us pay full price. His other medicine was like $600. We cannot afford that. Yeah. We're in our late 60s.
Sure. Dolores, let me offer you this, if I could. There's a lot of people on the line.
I called your office.
You did? Okay.
I called you. Oh, yeah, many times. And the other thing I have is...
Okay, but who did you talk to? Did you talk to Jeannie?
I talked to a lady in your office, and she said that she was going to hand it over to someone, and it was a month ago.
Well, we're going to get back to you tomorrow. Patty is here with me. Patty helps me on health care issues, and then Jeannie in the district office helps on veterans issues. I'm going to have one of them call you tomorrow. I don't want you to give too much detail. There's a lot of people on the line. So,
I have another question for you, real quick. I just turned 65, but before I turned 65, I wanted to get on my Social Security online and see. I knew I didn't have enough hours. I could not get into it because I had to stop theft on everything because we were part of that theft from TRICARE 2 different times and from the Pentagon. Well, evidently, the government has made that credit card accounting company that starts with an E.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, Dolores, let me again, the same kind of thing.
Or something like that.
This is kind of specific.
But I don't think that they should be mixed up in Social Security.
Okay.
A credit card.
Again, what I need to do is refer you to 2 people, 1 of 2 people in my office. Either Jeannie or Patty is going to get back to you. What I want you to do is press 7 on your phone, and that'll transfer you into my Washington office, and they're going to take down more detail on this.
Well,
and
they
we'll get back
did
to you
send me
tomorrow.
some papers on it, but it still makes me very angry that...
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we need papers is you need to give us permission to look into this. So anyway, we'll call you tomorrow.
Documents.
Can you do that? Can you just press
why they did it?
Yeah, go ahead and press 7, and we're going to take down the detail, and somebody's going to get back to you, okay? We'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
you.
Bye. Dolores actually raised a good point. A lot of times, obviously, one of my primary duties is to try to make laws that are for the good of all society and to use good judgment as to how I best serve you in building, again, a good country. But we also have a very active and necessary constituent service part of the office. So if you encounter a problem as you're interacting with the federal government, you're certainly welcome to call us at any time. Either we have offices in Lincoln, Fremont, and Norfolk, and then, of course, in Washington, D.C. So thanks, Dolores, for the input. We'll get back to you. Let's now go to, hi, Lowell, are you on the line?
Robert Campbell.
Hi, Robert.
How you doing, sir?
Good, doing great, thanks. Thanks for staying on the line.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one is back in February, gas was $3.19 a gallon here. They said there was 400 million options for it to go up on the stock market. It went up to 352, and they made their money. Yep. Now here last week, an Enron CEO says with the crisis in Baghdad, it could go up to as much as another $1. How are you guys going to put a control on this? Because we're exporting more oil than we have since 1960 out of the United States. Could you answer that one for me? Then I have one more for you.
Well, let's make a couple of distinctions here. Enron is gone. You mean Exxon, I think.
Exxon, right. ExxonMobil.
Right. And
ExxonMobil.
Yes. And secondly, there is an exporting of gasoline going on in the country as refiners have that capacity to do so. But this is a thorny issue. I will grant you that, and it is a difficult issue because to me it looks like a new base price is established every now and then by the major suppliers, and therefore they allow time for the economies to absorb higher and higher energy costs so that it doesn't necessarily reduce demand. People have a little bit of time to adjust. But you do not see the much lower levels go down, or when their supply is higher, you don't see the price come down. In other words, they reestablish new ceilings each time there is a supply issue or some type of crisis. That's pretty clear. You also have an issue of, again, commodity prices going up in general, which is a form of inflation. That's related to this national debt problem and the value of the dollar, which is, again, back to our earlier conversation about our need to get the budgetary situation back under control. So I don't have the fullness of a good answer for you as to why that energy price is jumping. Whenever there is instability in the world, there is going to be built into the market some concern that there could be supply disruption, and that will move the price on the futures markets. That's just one of the underlying realities. But it does concern me as well that, again, we keep establishing new highs that seem to be permanent and aren't subjected to normal supply and demand and supply movements as in economies or as in markets that are more competitive. And it's tough. One of the things that we've tried to do over time since being in Congress is to diversify the energy portfolio. One of the early things we did, obviously, was to build out the portfolio of biofuels. Ethanol, in particular, is produced heavily in Nebraska. We think that ethanol provides about a 30-cent price competitor to gasoline. In other words, gasoline could be as much as 30 cents higher if ethanol was not present in the market. It also replaced the pollutant additive that was in gasoline before. So these are some of the benefits of ethanol. So those one of the specific priorities that we've undertaken in policy changes in order to diversify our fuel source and provide a competitive element to gasoline in order to keep the prices reasonable, as well as an environmental concern. So those are some of the things we're doing. But over time, obviously, we need to continue to shift the country to more sustainable energy sources, to move away from foreign oil that dictates to us more than just prices. It entangles us in very many foreign affairs difficulties. Fortunately, America is in an energy boom. If we were not in an energy boom, as many difficulties we're having now in the economy, it would be much, much worse. So thank you for your question. If you'd like to ask me a question, press 0. If you can't stay on the line, go ahead and press 7. Let's now go to, hi, Andrew. Andrew, you've been on the line a while. You there?
Hi, this is actually Mary Borikov.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. I actually live in your neighborhood, and I see you hiking around going to Prairie Life, and you look like you have a serious look on your face sometimes, and I appreciate sometimes the heavy burden of being representative of our government. Looks like
I'm trying to get that stress worked off from all these policy problems we're having in Washington.
It's a lot. Listening to your responses, I see that you've done some research on everything. One of the questions that I have, and we moved to Nebraska 6 or 7 years ago, and I just think it's a gift. It's my mother-in-law says it's like stepping into the 50s in some way, because some of the ideals are still that made America great are still, in force, still going. People still live the way that that I like. Now, one of the questions I have, and it revolves around a couple of the questions the previous people asked was, what are some of the ideals? Because you talked about ideals, family values, things like that. How would you look yourself? What are some of the guiding principles that you would use to look at new immigrants moving into our state? For instance, Mexicans, for instance, Hispanics, for instance. Actually, they're the majority, I think, that are moving into our state. And like, for instance, Norfolk and some of their reaction. How would you suggest that we assimilate them in a way that is true to our ideals? Because, we don't want to roll over and just say, we'll give you everything. But on the other hand, how do we give charity based on them?
Okay. Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. Since you raised the issue of me walking to the gym, I have to ask you, is the Scooby-Doo van back in your driveway?
No, it's still at the warehouse. It can only do trips to the back and forth to FedEx. That's all it can do.
Now you know I know who's on the line. Well, let me answer your question. I think it's a high-level question in one sense, but it has practical implications in immigration policy. I think that's what you're asking me. So let me just wade into immigration policy in general. A robust and vibrant immigration policy has been an important part of America's history. It's been a part of our tradition. It's a set of values that we honor and cherish. And I think we ought to uphold this time-honored tradition of welcoming new people to our country, particularly those who are fleeing persecution, political persecution, or some form of economic persecution. With that said, however, you cannot have a just and orderly immigration policy when there is chaos and disorder at your border. You cannot have a just and orderly immigration system when you have no interior enforcement of laws. And these are two of the main areas that have to be worked on very diligently to rebalance the situation that we're currently in. So I think immigration policy is complex and multi-layered. And right now you see another whole issue with children coming over the border from Central America. Young people who are completely vulnerable to manipulation and abuse being sent into the country because word's gotten out in Central America that if you get in, you can basically stay. What we did this morning, by the way, in terms of a specific, was add on $100 million to what's called a Foreign Operations Subcommittee Appropriations Bill to help the border personnel properly address that situation down there. But there are really four key pillars, I think, to proper and good immigration policy. The first, again, is border security. The second is interior enforcement. It is against the law to come into the country illegally. It is against the law to hire people who are in the country illegally. And for many, many years, there was no enforcement interiorly on people who were willingly violating the law and hiring people illegally. And that's a form of what I call corporate welfare, and it has to stop. The third pillar of this is streamlining legal processes. It's not fair to people who are standing in line legally to come to our country when you have some special privilege to those who are asking for help and have come here illegally. Now, with that said, I think we also have to have what I call humanitarian exceptions. There are some people who have been here who have no recourse to go back anywhere else, or are a child, or sick, and maybe perhaps expanding what I call humanitarian exceptions without providing a blanket amnesty would be in order. There are other people, again, who have come here illegally, who are being maybe paid under the table illegally. You've got two illegal acts going on there. They should be deported, and the person who has hired them and is doing that willfully should also be prosecuted. The fourth component of this is foreign policy considerations that actually decrease the need for economic migration. Now, we have the issue with the children at the border is particularly dramatic because these are children, and there's so many of them who have come so quickly. We do not have reciprocal policies in place with, for instance, Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador that would allow some sort of normalization, reprocessing of people, and a stoppage of this flow quickly. And that's what needs to happen. Word needs to get out that this is not proper. Our ambassadors working with their governments need to try to halt this before it stops. But the whole idea of foreign policy considerations that help build out economies, help further our outreach efforts with technical assistance. For instance, providing, I was just in Guatemala and Honduras, by the way, looking at some new forms of assistance, and they're called what I call inclusive capitalism. These are projects underwritten by the private sector. Cargill Corporation was one private corporation that was actually helping the poorest of the poor there with capital needs. One of the things that we looked at was a bakery run by women, many of whom had shortly before that been in desperate poverty. This bakery is in the murder capital of the world, in the area with the highest murder rate in the world, and it's run by women. And to see their empowerment, they were not only helped, again, through private sector help by a major international corporation, Cargill. They are being assisted by a non-governmental organization called CARE with some public dollars given to them by the United States government. So the whole idea here in terms of empowerment is to restabilize the areas that are in desperate conditions, provide the proper humanitarian aid, but not simply just airdrop it from a helicopter. Provide it in a sustainable manner so that people are really empowered with an inclusive form of capitalism to enter into the market, to take responsibility and seize opportunity. You should have seen these women who were so filled with confidence, so filled with this great, what you called a gift of an understanding of how to not only care for themselves, but to provide good products for others. It was really quite a moving experience. So this is also a component of immigration policy that has to be worked on. This is also an component of national security policy. It's very hard for Americans to sit by idly while other people just die. We don't do that as a nation. That's not our values. And when we do help other people, we do benefit from the economic exchange as well as culture exchange. But thirdly, creating the conditions for international stability and a little bit of opportunity takes away twisted forms of nationalism that can create the conditions for belligerent behavior and war. That's why we do all of these things. It's intimately tied to our national security and our values. Particularly in Central America, it has an immigration issue component as well. So, Mary, that's a long-winded answer to give you an overview of what I think about how we deal with this. It's not as though we've done nothing at the border since I've been in Congress. We've poured tremendous resources into trying to secure it better, but a lot of the problems has grown.
I was more looking for advice as how should the average Nebraskan look at a recent immigrant, and what's the framework? Should they go, they should just, suck it up and, I agree that they should learn English, but past a certain age when you get old, I mean, I'm over 40, I know it's harder, what's the framework that we should look at them? Should we what's the line where we're giving, but we're giving too much past this line? There's the big picture, but then there's that level of how are we going to deal with them in Lincoln? How are we going to deal with them in Seward, or what?
Okay.
Do you? Yeah, I don't know if that.
I'll take a crack at that too. Well, again, let me go back to something that I did say. America has been a just and generous nation. We've opened our arms to persons who want to come here and rebuild their lives. But we can't be a just and generous nation with chaos and discord at the border or no enforcement of laws interiorly. That undermines our ability to be generous. And I think that's what we're struggling with as a country now. In Nebraska, people are very welcoming. The first large immigrant, obviously, there were waves of German immigrants and Czech immigrants. Most Nebraskans trace their ancestry to those immigrant groups that came a long time ago. The next large wave of immigrants was from Vietnam. Particularly in Lincoln, the Vietnamese community has integrated quite successfully into the community, has done a very good job of starting businesses, participating in public life, and at the same time retaining the important aspects of the culture in which they came from and the traditions. It's quite a beautiful story of integration and assimilation and celebration of a diversity of culture. And now, of course, we have more people from the Central North America as well as Central and South America coming. And I think the Nebraskans have values that are open and welcoming to new people, but we also have expectations that people are going to try to work hard and fit in and make a contribution. So, all right, thanks, Mary, for the insights and the question. Sorry to talk so long. If you'd like to ask me a question, press 0. If you'd like to leave me a message, press 7. Let's now go to Bobby. Hi, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I was in your office some time ago with my father-in-law, 84 years old, and you patted him on the back, and he just loved that. We came in because we was wondering about why this company was called First Alliance, and I think it was it's a company that takes advantage of people when they're trying to get a loan.
Bobby, I'm having trouble remembering this. First Alliance. Could you give me a little bit more information?
Yeah, they're a mortgage company.
Okay.
And they took our kids' home away from them. I'm a little shook up on here. I didn't know if I'd get on or not.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well,
let me make this suggestion to you. Since it seems kind of personal, could you press 7, and a member of the staff will talk to you and get your information down. I'd like to have someone call you back tomorrow and get more detail on this.
We came into your office and we gave all the information to you, sir.
Okay. Did you get some assistance?
We haven't heard back from you.
Okay. Do you remember who you talked to?
Well, it was a young boy who came in. I guess I call him a boy because I'm a Vietnam vet and I'm a little older now. But we all came in there and we talked this thing out, and he wrote some notes down. And my kids are in a rental right now because they lost to Ocwen and First Alliance their home.
Okay. Did you come into Washington or Lincoln?
No, we came into Lincoln, and you came into your office, and you shook our hands and took off. And we were giving him all this information about what happened, and this lousy company is terrible about taking other people's homes away from them.
Okay. Well,
and,
let me do
not
this.
The first time.
I'm
terrible.
sorry.
Internet.
I'm sorry for, first of all, that this is happening to you guys, and I want to get back into this. And I apologize for the delay that we've caused in not getting back to you quicker. What I'd like you to do, again, is press 7. Would you give one of my staff some more of the details here? Again, and I'm sorry to make you go through this, but I will have someone get back to you tomorrow. Okay? Is that fair, Bobby?
All right, I'll try it, sir.
Yeah, just press 7, and then someone will take down your phone number, and then a member of the local staff, Todd, probably will call you tomorrow from Lincoln. And again, I'm sorry we didn't give you the quicker service on this. Give my best to your father-in-law, please.
I will.
Okay, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Let's
You bet.
now go to, hi, Nidra, are you on the line?
Hello?
Hi, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just, I'm not sure there's much hope for Washington at this point. But you were talking about the VA, and I had an idea. I had heard that there are a lot, maybe in some cases more than 50% of the doctors that work there that actually don't see patients. And I think if you were to take vouchers for people that are on a waiting list so that they could go see anyone they wanted and pay for those vouchers by firing anybody that's not actually seeing patients or working with patients, you get some service real quick.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm not aware of that statistic.
It's kind of like the schools, where the schools have a lot of doctorates of education, that make an awful lot of money, and the teachers aren't necessarily getting the money they need in the classroom.
Yeah.
It just kind of builds up a bureaucracy, and that was my understanding with some of the VA hospitals, had a lot of doctors on staff that don't actually see patients anymore. And I'm sure that's true of, some of the other staff as well.
Well, let me wade back in the VA issue, because I'd like, if anybody else wants to give me an opinion on this, I certainly would welcome it. And let's just go back as to why we have a VA in the first place. The VA system was developed over time and really came into being in the last century in order to provide specialized care for our veterans, period. Veterans who have either been wounded in battle, but also to extend that care in time as they integrate back into civilian life. Obviously, there was a great desire on the part of society to serve those who have sacrificed so much for all of us, to ensure that they had the adequate care wherever they were, and where there weren't facilities exactly nearby. There's accommodations, you called it vouchers, but people are able to go see other doctors if they're referred to, if the VA can't see them in an appropriate amount of time. There are some new discussions underway as to how to modernize and transition the VA so that it is an effective 21st century medical system that meets the specialized needs of veterans, but also leverages some of the other opportunities in the private medical sector and public medical sector that are non-VA to get veterans the care they need. And we have to be a little bit careful with that. Many people, again, are understandably attached to the concept of a standalone VA system as a parallel medical system for veterans. Can we have a reasoned discussion as to how we move forward, particularly in areas where the VA can't serve veterans rapidly, as to how maybe even a VA-certified facility could do so that is more of a private sector facility. There's ideas out there like that, but what we can't do is undermine the commitment that we must have as a society to ensure that the veterans get our highest and best care, because that's what we promised them. And so as we move forward on how to reform this, there will be a lot of ideas out there, but I do think we have to protect the legacy of the system, but think about constructive ways to modernize and leverage other resources out there in order to deliver care in the highest, best way. So that's basically the way I think about it. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let's now go to, hi, Earl, are you on the line? Good evening, a member of the Flitner family?
Speaking.
Yeah, go ahead, Earl.
Yeah, to get away from the domestic stuff, the one that kind of frightens me the most is the possibility of sending troops back into Iraq.
Yeah.
I would absolutely oppose that. It's been long enough, it's not only the Army and the regular Army and stuff like that. Look at these poor guys from the National Guard that have been deployed over there time after time after time.
Right.
And we're not accomplishing anything, obviously.
Let me make some comments, if I could, Earl, that are reflective of the broader problem in the Middle East. Would that be all right with you?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Last week, I offered an amendment on the floor of the House of Representatives to the Department of Defense Appropriations Bill, the spending bill for our defense needs. And I lost the amendment. I got a lot of votes, both Republican and Democrat. So it was a bipartisan effort for me and a bipartisan effort against me. But basically what I said was it would prohibit any weapons shipments to Syria. And I did this for a reason. You recall about a year ago, the Syrian situation was quite severe, and there was a moment there where it looked like the president might actually launch airstrikes against Syria because of their use of chemical weapons. The president then came to Congress to ask for permission. I had been against that prior to the permission being asked, but we had a vote on it. The American people also spoke very loudly and clearly. No military engagement in Syria. As an extension of that, I felt it was important to raise the prospect of weapons shipments to Syria as well, because what we have going on there is a major civil war. We have a patchwork of shifting alliances and rebel groups, and it's a bit naive to think that we could somehow vet moderate groups who could take our weaponry and then be on the side of a reasoned growing force that could conquer Assad and his brutality and then bring about a flourishing republic after a constitutional convention. I mean, that is just an academic dream world. And the more likely scenario would be that our weapons would fall into the hands of sociopathic zealots who now, in the last week, have overrun large areas of Iraq, which we thought were somewhat stable just 2 weeks ago. Our best foreign policy and CIA analysts could not have imagined what has just happened in Iraq, where the army will not fight, they are disintegrating. The president of the country will not come to terms with certain political realities and be inclusive of other elements. Wholesale minority communities are under great stress. The Christian community is being wiped out or forced to flee. There are a number, we've talked extensively on this phone call about new immigrants. There is a fairly large Iraqi exile community in Lincoln. One of the minority groups there they're called the Yazidis. They practice an ancient, peaceful religion that is not Islamic, nor is it Christian per se. They are one of the groups that has existed there and have an ancient right to be there like anyone else. They have just come into my office pleading for humanitarian help because they are under great stress. In fact, I had a former Iraqi official in my office just last week telling me that when these fighters for this so-called Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, when they got to one of these towns, they began to simply ask people, "Are you Muslim? Are you Muslim?" And if anyone said no, and one Yazidi man said no, they cut his throat like it was an onion. That's what she told me. This was an official, former official in the Iraqi government. So the collapsing of what we call the nation of Iraq and its reversion back to its tribal loyalties in the northern area, the Kurds, Sunni loyalties, as well as Shia loyalties in the more southern area in Baghdad, represents a great heartache for so many of us and who have sacrificed so much to try to bring about a stable and free Iraq that could be maybe a new model for inclusion and prosperity in the Middle East. I think there will be very strong pushback if the president tries to send combat troops into the area. He has now sent in military advisors. We will probably look for opportunities to assist the Iraqis in fighting off this insurgency, which is doing horrific damage to peaceful Muslims, Christians, as well as other minority groups. It's a colossal disaster and a failure, and it is shocking at the rapidity by which this has come about. With absence a larger strategy to contain this contagion, which looks at stabilizing the country of Jordan, continues to build upon the significant relationship that we have with Israel, looks at reestablishing the relationship that we have had in the past with Turkey, assist the Egyptians, that's my perspective, assist the Egyptians in stabilizing their disruptive elements, particularly in the Sinai. Absent a regional strategy, this contagion may not be contained. That is a way to do it. And then you think about the poor country of Lebanon, which gets trampled underfoot by international forces that are larger than it. That's what's going on here. The other issue becomes in a military war, for airstrikes, for instance, who do you strike? It's not as though columns of soldiers are going down the road. These people, this ISIS, this new movement, rebel movement, if you will, blend into the population very, very rapidly. And it might be in some cases that the population is welcoming them because they have no other option. They can't stand against them. They have no army to protect them. And then the central government in Baghdad under Maliki has done nothing to include them in a robust fashion in the governing coalition. And that's what's going on here. So I hear your point loud and clear, and take it well under advisement that you very much are against troops going in. So thank you very much. And by the way, I should say a word about how much Nebraska has sacrificed in the war in Iraq and in the war in Afghanistan. And I want to commend any of you who are listening for doing your part in the last 10 years to bring a bit of stability in that area at great personal sacrifice. We're very, very grateful. Let's now go to Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Are you on the line?
Yes.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Yes, what's your question?
I have a friend who has used the current Affordable Health Care Act, and it has saved her life. I have another friend who is an immigrant and has used the current AHC Act to afford cataract surgery and is therefore now able to read the English you are limiting her to. And I have a friend who has used the AHC Act for her differently abled son to seek previously unaffordable health care, which has put her mind at ease and has therefore improved her own health. Inventors go through all kinds of trial runs before a final or semi-final product is achieved. Why is it that you oppose this first draft of a life and livelihood saving act, which would make the sacred American goals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness easier?
Okay, well, thank you for those stories, and thank you for your input on this. These are very hard questions that you've asked, and they deserve a good response. I have always said, and I said it earlier in this call, that we need the right type of health care reform, one that is going to improve our system, help people who are in vulnerable circumstances, while at the same time reducing cost.
And we need to begin with something. It may be failure.
Well, please let me finish, okay? Undoubtedly, you are absolutely correct. I am not going here to deny what you said. Some people have benefited from the new law. I have also said that very clearly publicly. They have. The key is to design a law that keeps the benefits for certain people who were excluded from our system previously, who did not have access to affordable insurance to protect themselves because they either had a pre-existing condition or some other impediment to that access. That was a broken market system. I readily acknowledge that. But what we've got with the new law is, so while some people are being helped, many people are being hurt. We have skyrocketing premiums. We have a reduction of jobs because employers can't afford to pick this up. And the end result of all of this is, we've been able to help a few at the expense of the many. I think we can do better than this. I have said in the next version of healthcare reform that you've got to keep people who could not find affordable quality insurance who had pre-existing conditions. That should not be taken away from them. That has got to be built into the market reform. I think lifting caps off of insurance amounts was an appropriate reform as well. I supported that before the new health care law. All you were doing was forcing people who had catastrophic conditions to run from job to job, and it didn't save the systems it didn't save the entire system any money. Those were some of the ideas, and I supported moving kids, by the way, onto parents' insurance until an older age. I supported that as well. I think those are reasonable reforms because that replenishes the market pool. But what I'm having trouble with is the reduction of competition in the market for affordable quality insurance products, forcing employers to reduce jobs because they simply can't afford to absorb the cost. The fact that most families are seeing skyrocketing premiums as well as the potential for reduced benefits in their plans. That wasn't supposed to come about from this new law. I just simply think we're better. I respect what you said, and I'm happy that certain people are being helped, and I think they need to be continue to be helped in any new version of the health care law that we do pass. There's just better ways to structure this, I think, that could actually reduce money and not erode people's choice, people's health care liberties, and at the same time not harm the economy. That's been my position. So I know there might be disagreement with that. You obviously have a bit of a disagreement with me, Elizabeth, but I'm really grateful for your input on this. You raised some very reasonable points. Thank you so much. Let's now go to Donette. Hi, Donette. Are you on the line?
Donette here, yes?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. My question was about the food stamp program here in Nebraska. Now, every so often you have to have a review to determine your eligibility still. Well, our review came up in April of this year. And we sent our application in with our medical premium thing also. And they told us that first of all, they couldn't find, they told us we hadn't sent it in yet. And I told them what day we mailed it on all this. Then they finally found our energy assistance went along
hearing
with
you.
it. And
and
yes? Hello? You still there?
Hello?
Can you all hear Carla?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you for your service, sir.
Sure.
I would like to talk about the VA scheduling
Okay.
issue. One of the things that not a lot of people understand is not just scheduling veterans in to see the VA doctors. What about also the veterans that have been denied non-VA care? What about the VA only allowing people to get outside care only in Omaha? It's harder to get outside care from Lincoln, North Platte, Norfolk, anywhere around their home. Why don't we look at the management and the stockholders in the local area for VA? Are they doing what's best for the veterans and for the taxpayers and not themselves? Why is the VA management and stockholders allowed to spend taxpayer money on renting office space in Omaha instead of using the own federal land here in Lincoln? And lastly but least, the unions, just to let the other gentleman know, the unions don't always help. They have their own agendas with the management and the stockholders.
Okay, well, let me address one aspect of your question, if I could. We recently, just earlier this month, voted to give veterans access to private health care providers at VA expense if they're facing a long wait or they live more than 40 miles from a VA facility. So obviously in Omaha and Lincoln, we've got VA facilities, and in other places in the state. But in those circumstances, this will expedite that process. The Senate has passed this bill with similar provisions, so I imagine this will become law soon. As to your question about leasing space elsewhere versus in the VA system, I don't have a good answer for you on that one. So I hope this helps. Thank you so much. Let's now go to Carl. Are you on the line? Carl? Is it Carly? I'm sorry.
Carol.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carol.
K-A-R-Y-L.
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have a concern about, I'm a Christian. I believe in religious freedom and things like that. But I worry about possibly the groups that are fighting for their religious freedom may open the door for the Muslim population to try to practice Sharia law in this country. And I do not think you can have two governments in one country. Do you see any possibility of that being a side effect of some of these court cases for religious freedom?
Interesting question. I do not see that as a possible side effect. We have one law that applies to everyone. That law is built on an understanding that all persons have human dignity and therefore rights and certain responsibilities. It's protected by a constitution and long precedent in law that does not incorporate parallel system of religious creedal faith into its consideration. So I would suggest that possibility is either remote or non-existent. That's just inconsistent with our tradition, and I just don't see how that would happen. But I think the deeper issue, though, is to ensure that we do revive an understanding of religious freedom and that basic sacred right that we all have. There are some stresses upon this first freedom, one of which is in the health care bill, forcing people to violate their ethical sensibilities to pay for certain drugs and procedures that are inconsistent with their faith tradition or reasonably held beliefs. For instance, the Supreme Court is getting ready to rule on a case that Hobby Lobby brought against the government because they were providing health care for the employees, as the new health care law dictates, a fine, good health care plan. Their belief system is very well known. They close on Sunday because that, in their view, as a Christian, their company is informed by their Christian ideals of the owners, I assume, and they don't want to work on Sunday. So they close. But the government's coming along and asking them to pay for certain drugs that violate their deeply held belief system, and they've sued the government. And so I think this is one of the most important cases in American history that's getting ready to be ruled upon. Because if the government wins, then the government will set up a system to determine who's religious enough to get an exemption from its laws, and it will coerce people into either violating their right of conscience and their religious faith or obeying the government. That's a false choice. That's inconsistent with our tradition, inconsistent with precedent and law, and inconsistent with our the culture of our health care up to this point in time. So anyway, that wasn't your question, but I wanted to speak to that because the Hobby Lobby case is right around the corner and being ruled on. But thank you, Carla. Right. I really appreciate the time. I'm not going to have time for much more dialogue here, but I'm really grateful for all of you who have stayed on the line. If you do want to leave me your opinion or your thought or idea, press 7, or go to my website, fortenberry.house.gov. Please sign up for the Fort Report. That's a weekly or so email that we send out on various issues of the day. I am going to go to Joy now. Joy, are you on the line?
It's David. David Perez.
Oh, hi, David. Sorry about that.
Hi. Oh, no, that's all right. I had two quick concerns. My first concern was the fact that the government is using the IRS to stifle speech on the Republican side. You know, crazy people on the left, the socialists, the communists, the anarchists, they don't get the kind of scrutiny that people in the Tea Party do. And I feel like it's so hard for the Republicans to make any progress. You know, I've been a Republican for 20 years, and I just feel like we've never had the kind of heavy-handed force against us that we did in the last election. And I'm worried that they're just going to do that and get away with it. I don't feel like the Republican leadership has really stood up to that
David,
kind of heavy-handed
can I interrupt
attack.
you for a moment?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to do this to you, but again, this isn't a political call. I don't know if I'm talking to Republicans or Democrats or independents. I'm just talking to Nebraskans. So I do need to refrain from any explicit political commentary about what Republicans or Democrats aren't doing. So just to give you a little bit of caution there.
Okay. Well,
but I can talk to the issue of the IRS.
It works on both sides, though.
Can I talk to you about the issue of the IRS? Because I do have some statistics that confirm what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the IRS put 300 applications for charitable status on hold. 3% of those leaned right, 10% leaned left, 40% of the right-leaning were approved, 70% of the left-leaning were approved. Of the groups asked inappropriately to divulge donors, 89% of those were right-leaning. So again, it shouldn't matter to an agency of the government what your political belief or religious belief is. It should not matter. They should treat you with fairness and impartiality. And it doesn't matter if this was targeting of the left or targeting of the right. It's wrong. It's a violation of the public trust. That's why this has risen to such an appropriately intense level in the United States Congress, because there are real issues here as to how we move forward and regain the public trust. Of all agencies that ought to have a heightened sense of this, it's the IRS, who deal with a very sensitive issue of taking your money and applying it to public services. So I appreciate. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Oh no, it's okay. I'm sorry if I phrased that badly. It bothers me. That's all.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to say was that my parents they have Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and they just got a letter from their doctor that their doctor is no longer accepting Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Yes.
And that freaked them out. So I don't know.
I wonder if that was their doctor is a part of Catholic Health Initiatives. Do you know?
No.
Well,
I don't think so.
Okay, well then that might be a specific case. There has been a problem in Nebraska in which Catholic Health Initiatives, which probably serves a big percent of the population in Nebraska, maybe 40% if I remember correctly, their contract is not being renewed with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I just met with Blue Cross Blue Shield on this issue. They're hopeful this can be resolved in the fall. I think it's in the interest of both parties to get this resolved. I'm hopeful that it gets resolved. I got the same letter, by the way, a similar letter, because some of the doctors that my family has used have been a part of this network, and I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. So anyway, hopefully that gets resolved, because there's just too many Nebraskans that would be affected by this. But well, David, who's Joy Smith, by the way? Sorry to give the name out.
She's my wife.
Oh, okay, that's my mother's name, by the way.
We both live here, so.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry to say that in front of other people. I just couldn't help it.
It's okay.
Okay, well, thanks so much for the input and dialogue. Well, thanks to everyone who stayed on the line this long. I really appreciate having the time to talk to you and the dialogue with you about the important issues facing our country. I think it's been a good, robust discussion. Thanks for your opinions and perspectives. I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn from you. We're working hard to try to make the best judgment I can as to, again, how to build a more just and orderly America. I think that's the challenge of us all. And I thank you for being good Nebraskans who are very attentive to doing your civic duty and telling me, as your representatives, what your thoughts and perspectives are. I'm very, very grateful for that. Again, if you didn't get a chance to ask me a question, press 7. I'll be able to see your question or get your opinion. And if you would be kind enough to sign up for the Fort Report, that's the weekly email that we send out, it would help us stay closer to you, giving you more direct information. I'd be grateful if you'd sign up for that. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Go Big Red.